Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni, the 123rd verse from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Kênh Thai in the USA. Just as a merchant, with a small escort and great wealth, avoids a perilous route, just as one desiring to live avoids poison, even so should one shun evil things. This verse illuminates the wisdom of careful discernment and ethical vigilance, teaching us to avoid all forms of evil as one would avoid danger or poison. In the story related to this verse, a traveling merchant embarked on a journey across a vast desert, carrying great wealth. He was accompanied by only a small group of escorts, and he knew that any misstep on a perilous route could cost him his life and destroy his possessions. He was cautious, attentive, and diligent in choosing a path that ensured his safety. He avoided shortcuts through treacherous terrain, poisonous waters, and unstable bridges, for even a moment of carelessness could bring disaster. Similarly, in life, the mind, like the merchant's wealth, is precious. Our life, our consciousness, and the seeds of virtue and awakening we carry are treasures that must be protected with the same diligence and care. The Buddha compares the avoidance of evil to a merchant's careful journey because the consequences of engaging in unwholesome actions through greed, anger, or delusion are like perilous paths that can bring suffering, harm, and loss. Just as a wise merchant takes precautions to ensure safety, the wise practitioner avoids all forms of evil, observing thoughts, words, and deeds to prevent harm and preserve the preciousness of life. The merchant's journey teaches the importance of mindfulness and discernment in everyday choices. Each step must be considered, each decision weighed carefully to avoid danger. In the same way, the practitioner must cultivate constant awareness of the mind and actions, discerning which thoughts, words, and deeds lead to harm and which lead to virtue. Avoiding evil is not a passive act, but an active practice of ethical vigilance. When one sees the subtle arising of anger, greed, envy, or harmful desire, one does not indulge it, just as the merchant does not cross a dangerous path despite the temptation of a shortcut. The accumulation of wisdom, ethical integrity, and clarity arises through such careful observation. The disciple who practices in this manner strengthens the mind, protects the heart, and cultivates a life aligned with Dharma. Through repeated mindfulness and careful ethical reflection, the mind gradually becomes vigilant, clear, and steady, naturally avoiding the perilous paths of unwholesome action. The Buddha emphasizes that life itself is fragile and that every being carries precious potential within the heart. Just as the merchant's wealth is valuable and requires protection, so too is the mind, consciousness, and the capacity for virtue and awakening. Evil, whether in thought, word, or deed, acts like poison, threatening the well-being of the mind and the seeds of merit that have been cultivated. By practicing careful discernment, ethical vigilance, and mindfulness, the disciple prevents the subtle contamination of greed, anger, or delusion. Avoidance of evil is thus an act of protection and care for the mind, ensuring that the seeds of merit and awakening are preserved and allowed to grow. Over time, this careful practice transforms ordinary life into a continuous path of virtue, clarity, and insight, where each moment is an opportunity to act with wisdom and prevent harm. The story of the merchant also teaches patience, perseverance, and attentiveness. He knew that hasty decisions, indulgence in desire, or neglect of caution could bring irreparable loss. Similarly, the practitioner must cultivate patience in observing the arising of unwholesome tendencies and act with restraint to avoid harm. Even subtle inclinations toward anger, pride, or greed must be recognized and abandoned before they bear fruit. The practice of shunning evil is therefore both preventive and transformative. By avoiding harmful actions, the mind remains pure, steady, and open to the natural unfolding of wisdom and compassion, just as a merchant's careful steps ensure safe passage through perilous terrain. The practitioner's mindful avoidance of evil ensures the steady progress of the mind on the path of Dharma, preserving life, consciousness, and the seeds of awakening. The Buddha also teaches that ethical vigilance is not a one-time effort, but a continuous practice. Each moment presents opportunities to act virtuously or unwholesomely. By observing thoughts, words, and deeds with care, the disciple develops clarity and ethical discernment, understanding which actions lead to peace, joy, and awakening, and which actions lead to suffering, agitation, and karmic consequences. Avoiding evil is therefore not merely a moral injunction, but a practical guidance for life, a method for preserving the mind, protecting others, and cultivating wholesome conditions for growth. The merchant's example serves as a vivid illustration of the diligence, patience, and attention required to navigate life successfully, highlighting the wisdom of cautious, mindful, and ethical living. Even small indulgences in harmful thoughts or actions accumulate like hidden dangers along a journey. The disciple who neglects vigilance may encounter suffering unexpectedly, just as a merchant crossing an unsafe path may meet peril despite his wealth. By practicing mindfulness, reflection, and ethical restraint, one anticipates potential harm and avoids the consequences of unwholesome behavior. Each deliberate act of avoidance strengthens the mind, fosters merit, and cultivates steadiness and clarity. Over time, the cumulative effect of such vigilance transforms ordinary life into a continuous field of Dharma, where the mind naturally gravitates toward virtue, compassion, and insight. The awareness of subtle danger encourages the practitioner to act with care, patience, and mindfulness in every situation, avoiding harm to self and others and nurturing the seeds of awakening. The 123rd verse also teaches that avoidance of evil is an active, positive practice. It is not enough to merely refrain from harm. The mind must be attentive, discerning, and vigilant. By observing the arising of subtle desires, aversions, and delusions, the disciple protects the mind, cultivates ethical strength, and preserves the seeds of merit. The merchant does not simply hope to avoid danger. He chooses the safest path, step by step, with awareness and care. In the same way, the practitioner actively cultivates vigilance, discernment, and ethical mindfulness to avoid the perilous consequences of unwholesome actions. Through patient, repeated, and mindful practice, the mind gradually becomes steady, clear, and aligned with Dharma, naturally avoiding evil and fostering the growth of virtue, clarity, and compassion. Just as the merchant's careful choices ensure the safety of his life and wealth, the practitioner's mindful observation of the mind, words, and deeds ensures the preservation of life, consciousness, and the seeds of awakening. Awareness of danger, ethical vigilance, and the consistent practice of avoiding harm protect the mind from the subtle accumulation of unwholesome tendencies. By cultivating these qualities, the disciple nurtures patience, discernment, and joy in ethical living. The steady avoidance of evil, combined with the repeated practice of wholesome action, gradually transforms the heart and mind, fostering wisdom, compassion, and insight. The teachings of the Buddha guide us to treat each moment with care, attention, and ethical mindfulness, recognizing the preciousness of life and the natural consequences of our actions. The disciple who understands this teaching approaches life with care, mindfulness, and ethical vigilance. Each moment becomes an opportunity to act wisely, prevent harm, and cultivate merit. By avoiding evil as one would avoid poison or a perilous route, the mind remains steady, clear, and open to the natural unfolding of wisdom and compassion. The story of the merchant illuminates the importance of patience, discernment, and continuous ethical practice, teaching the disciple to navigate life skillfully, protect the mind, and cultivate the seeds of awakening. Each deliberate step toward virtue strengthens moral integrity, softens subtle defilements, and nurtures insight, joy, and freedom. The disciple who contemplates the 123rd verse of the Dhammapada understands that life is a journey of mindful navigation where each decision, thought, and action can lead either to safety and growth or to danger and suffering. Just as the merchant carefully surveys the route before taking each step, weighing risks and avoiding perilous paths, the wise practitioner observes the mind, discerning which tendencies, desires, and impulses may lead to harm. Evil, whether in the form of harmful speech, unwholesome thoughts, or destructive actions, resembles poison, subtle, dangerous, and often tempting. Yet, with vigilance, discernment, and ethical mindfulness, the disciple can recognize these dangers early, refrain from indulging them, and take deliberate steps to cultivate virtue. Avoiding evil is not simply abstaining from wrongdoing. It is an active, continuous, and skillful engagement with life, where awareness of potential harm guides every thought, word, and deed. The disciple who practices this consistently gradually strengthens the mind, nurtures merit, and develops clarity and wisdom, ensuring that the heart and consciousness remain unharmed by the subtle forces of greed, anger, and delusion. In observing the merchant's example, one sees the importance of patience, foresight, and ethical foresight. The merchant does not rush blindly toward his destination, even when wealth and desire tempt him to take shortcuts or reckless risks. Similarly, the practitioner understands that the mind, consciousness, and the seeds of virtue are precious and must be protected with continuous care. Ethical vigilance requires the deliberate recognition of potentially harmful thoughts and actions before they take root, just as the merchant avoids dangerous terrain before it becomes threatening. Over time, this careful practice becomes a natural disposition where the mind instinctively recognizes the danger of evil and moves away from it, nurturing peace, clarity, and steadiness. Each deliberate step taken in virtue strengthens the ethical foundation, cultivates joy in wholesome living, and reinforces the conditions for insight and awakening. Avoiding evil is also an act of self-preservation and protection for others. The subtle consequences of harmful actions are often far-reaching, affecting not only oneself but also those around us. Just as a merchant's misstep on a dangerous route could endanger not only himself, but also his companions. The indulgence in unwholesome thoughts or deeds can have ripple effects in the lives of others. The practitioner who cultivates awareness and shuns evil acts with responsibility, recognizing the interconnectedness of life and the impact of every action. This awareness fosters compassion, ethical care, and mindful engagement with the world. By consistently choosing the path of virtue and avoiding the perilous paths of greed, anger, and delusion, the disciple creates harmony, fosters merit, and nurtures the conditions for awakening both in self and in others. The Buddha's teaching emphasizes that avoidance of evil is a proactive practice, requiring continuous attention and discernment. Each moment presents opportunities to act ethically or unwholesomely, and the wise practitioner learns to recognize the subtle cues of potential harm. Small acts of negligence, anger, or greed may appear harmless at first, but, like the hidden dangers on a perilous route, can accumulate into significant suffering over time. Through careful observation, reflection, and deliberate restraint, the disciple prevents the arising of unwholesome actions, protecting the mind, and preserving the seeds of virtue. Just as the merchant measures the risks of each step and chooses the safest path, the practitioner navigates life with mindfulness, avoiding harm and nurturing the gradual accumulation of merit. Patience and consistency are central to this practice. The merchant's journey across treacherous terrain is neither rushed nor haphazard. Each step is deliberate, attentive, and measured. Likewise, the disciple cultivates patience and steadiness in observing the mind, refraining from impulsive actions that may lead to harm. Ethical vigilance is not a sporadic effort, but a continuous practice of discernment, reflection, and mindful engagement. By consistently avoiding evil and nurturing wholesome actions, the mind gradually becomes stable, clear, and serene. The accumulation of merit and the avoidance of harm occur naturally as a result of repeated, careful attention to each thought, word, and deed, allowing the practitioner to navigate life skillfully and cultivate conditions for awakening. The metaphor of poison used in the 123rd verse teaches the subtle yet powerful consequences of evil. Poison, once ingested, spreads silently and harms the body, often with effects that are delayed or unnoticed until significant damage occurs. Similarly, indulgence in unwholesome thoughts, speech, or deeds may seem minor initially, but their effects gradually manifest in suffering, agitation, and karmic consequences. The disciple who reflects on this truth cultivates mindfulness, discernment, and ethical care, ensuring that harmful tendencies are recognized and abandoned before they take root. Each act of restraint and avoidance is like choosing a safe path away from poison, preserving life, consciousness, and the seeds of virtue. Over time, this careful practice fortifies the mind, softens subtle defilements, and nurtures the natural growth of wisdom, compassion, and merit. Avoidance of evil also fosters the conditions for positive transformation and growth. Just as the merchant avoids dangerous routes to ensure the safe transport of his wealth, the practitioner avoids harmful thoughts and deeds to protect the heart and consciousness. By creating conditions free from harm, the mind becomes receptive to insight, ethical reflection, and compassionate engagement with the world. The gradual cultivation of virtue through avoidance of evil strengthens moral integrity, nurtures joy in ethical living, and develops the capacity for patience, resilience, and clarity. Ethical vigilance becomes a natural habit, guiding the disciple in every moment and allowing the steady unfolding of insight, compassion, and awakening. The practice of avoiding evil, when combined with the repeated cultivation of wholesome actions, creates a life of balance, clarity, and ethical harmony. Each decision to refrain from harmful thoughts, words, or deeds nurtures the heart and protects the mind from subtle contamination. The disciple who delights in ethical living develops the ability to act with discernment and care in every situation, naturally avoiding the perilous consequences of unwholesome behavior. Over time, this continuous practice transforms ordinary life into a living field of Dharma, where mindfulness, virtue, and compassion are cultivated, moment by moment. Just as a merchant's careful steps ensure safe arrival at a desired destination, the disciple's ethical vigilance ensures the steady progress of the mind toward clarity, joy, and awakening. The Buddha's teaching in the 123rd verse encourages reflection on the preciousness of life, the consequences of actions, and the necessity of careful navigation through the challenges of existence. By observing the mind attentively, avoiding subtle and obvious evils, and cultivating virtue continuously, the practitioner protects consciousness, nurtures merit, and fosters ethical integrity. Awareness of the potential dangers of unwholesome actions encourages diligence, patience, and skillful living. Each deliberate choice to avoid evil strengthens moral discernment, deepens insight, and nurtures a heart naturally inclined toward goodness, compassion, and the steady practice of Dharma. Thank you for watching my video. Namo. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.